The hearing room inside the Capitol was full. The kind of full that didn't just mean chairs were occupied. It meant tension was everywhere. You could feel it in the air, thick and unmoving. Reporters whispered, aides clutched notepads, cameras rolled quietly, capturing every second. Phones were live streaming to millions of viewers across the country. This was more than a regular oversight hearing. This was political theater at its sharpest point. At the center of the room sat two women polar opposites in background, style, and politics. Representative Jasmine Crockett, a fierce, quick-tongued voice from Texas, leaned forward, her dark hair sleek, her voice sharper than ever. Across from her sat Caroline Leavitt, the youngest member of her party, polished, poised, and often underestimated. They had been going back and forth for the last hour, trading data, policy jabs, and passive-aggressive remarks. But something shifted. Jasmine's patience, or perhaps her political filter, cracked. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Sit down, girl," she said, leaning toward Caroline with eyes locked and voice low but firm. There was a sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the back. A gasp, then silence. A few people chuckled nervously, unsure if it was a joke. But it wasn't. It was the kind of moment that makes or breaks careers, the kind of line that echoes on social media long after the news cameras are turned off. Caroline didn't blink. She didn't even flinch. There was no roll of the eyes, no biting comeback, no fake smile. Instead, she calmly set her papers down. Her expression softened, but her eyes stayed steady, fixed on Jasmine. And when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, not small, not shaken, just controlled. Almost a calm. "You know," she began, "I've been told to sit down more times than I can count." The room, which had just recovered from the last verbal strike, fell still again. No one expected her to respond this way. Not with anger, but with something deeper. A kind of silent strength. "When I ran for Congress at 25, she continued, "they told me I was too young. When I started speaking out, they said I was too loud. When I believed I had something to offer, they told me to wait my turn." Her voice didn't waver. In fact, it began to build just a little, a subtle rise. She wasn't just speaking to Jasmine anymore. She was speaking to every young person who ever felt dismissed, ignored, or pushed aside. "But I'm still here," she said. "I'm still standing, and I'm not sitting down. Not now, not ever." Even Jasmine looked surprised. Just for a second, her jaw loosened. Her eyes blinked, just once, as if trying to read what was happening. This wasn't a counterattack. It was something harder to deal with, a refusal to play the game the same way. Caroline wasn't finished. Her voice grew more steady, more certain. "I'm not here for applause," she said. "I'm not here for headlines or sound bites. I'm here because I believe in the people who never get invited to sit at the table. The single moms working night shifts. The girls in small towns who dream of something bigger. The people who feel invisible every day." Then she paused, just long enough to let the words settle in the air. "So no," she said again, now louder. "I won't sit down, girl. I'll stand for them." The room was silent for a moment that felt like an hour. Then, from the very back, someone clapped. Just one, then another, and another. Soon, the chamber, once so tense, was filled with a slow-building applause. It wasn't loud, it wasn't political, it wasn't even organized. It was human. Even some of Jasmine's staffers looked impressed. Reporters exchanged looks. Everyone knew what had just happened wasn't normal. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polished. It was real. Outside the room, things moved fast. Clips of the moment were already spreading. On TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, hashtags popped up in seconds. Hashtag #StandUpGirl, hashtag #SheDidn, single quotes T, sit down. News outlets rushed to publish headlines before the video hit 1 million views. But beyond the viral storm, something else was happening. Buried inside the hearing documents was a report no one had paid much attention to, at least not until now. It was a single paragraph attached to a routine budget update. Something about international data sharing agreements and a cybersecurity pilot program called Oracle. A minor item. Easy to miss, except someone didn't miss it. Across the Atlantic, in a quiet Brussels intelligence outpost, a government analyst paused her screen. She replayed Caroline's full statement, paying attention to the inflection, the phrasing. The slight pause between "I'm still here" and "I'm still standing." She pulled up the Oracle reference from the report. She picked up the phone. "This isn't just political drama," she whispered. "Something's wrong. She's sending a message." Back in Washington, the applause faded. The hearing ended. Jasmine Crockett walked out fast, flanked by staff, her expression unreadable. Caroline stayed a moment longer, collecting her papers slowly, calmly. What just looked like a fiery moment between two women was about to become something much bigger, and no one, not the media, not Congress, not even the White House, was ready for what came next. The hallway outside the hearing room was buzzing with noise, reporters shouting questions, camera shutters clicking, and security guiding people away. But Caroline Leavitt walked through it all like a ghost. Her expression was unreadable. Her mind still locked on something far beyond the echo of claps or viral fame. She had delivered the speech of her career, yes, but she knew the real story wasn't in what was said, it was in what wasn't. By the time she stepped into her black SUV and the doors shut, the sound outside vanished. Only her chief of staff, Lena Morales, sat beside her, holding an iPad glowing with dozens of alerts. "You're trending everywhere," Lena said, her voice low. "All platforms. Twitter, TikTok, even LinkedIn." She didn't sit down. As a headline on The Guardian, Caroline didn't smile. She leaned back, eyes unfocused, tapping her fingers on the leather seat. "There's something buried in that file from today's hearing." "Did you notice it?" Lena blinked. "What?" File Caroline turned to her and whispered, "The Oracle memo. It was slipped into the oversight documents. Page 87. No introduction, no author." Lena frowned, already pulling it up. "I thought that was just some cybersecurity thing." "Not just," Caroline said. "The language was off. It wasn't drafted like a domestic report. And I recognized the phrasing. It's old NATO terminology. Protocol 5. Lena went quiet. Back in the Capitol, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her office. She was angry at herself, at the room, at how quickly the narrative had slipped out of her hands. She had owned that moment until she didn't. Her aide, Marcus, entered with a tablet in hand. "You should see this," he said, hesitating. Jasmine looked up. "She's not just trending, she's weaponizing it." He played a video. Caroline's speech, cut with clips of struggling families, drone shots of small towns, and dramatic music. It wasn't campaign material. It was something else, like a message layered with meaning. Jasmine narrowed her eyes. "Get me everything we have on this Oracle program. I want to know who wrote it and why it was buried halfway across the world in an underground cybersecurity war room in Tel Aviv." A man named Asher Levi was watching the same video, but not for the speech. He paused the screen at frame 1108 just as Caroline set her papers down. He zoomed. In there, in faint pencil on the margin of the printed report, were 5 numbers. They weren't visible in most footage. But in one angle captured by a German news outlet, they were clear. 51,426. A code. Asher's hands moved quickly across his keyboard. The number wasn't a date, not a pin. It matched a protocol ID used in Operation Kestrel, a classified Western intelligence exchange program dormant since 2016. It had been shelved after an anonymous leak. Post surveillance on European citizens. But now it was back. And Caroline Leavitt, A rising congresswoman with no intel background had flashed it in the middle of a public hearing. Deliberate or accidental? Asher didn't think in accidents. He sent a secure message to a contact in Brussels. She made contact. Oracle is live. ID 51426 confirmed. Prepare for Phase 2. Meanwhile, Caroline's car pulled into a private garage in Arlington. She didn't go home. She walked down into a cold storage room under an old campaign office that hadn't been used in 2 years. Inside were shelves of unopened boxes and a single desk. Lena followed. "You've been here before?" Caroline nodded. "This was never just about politics. My dad was NSA. He died in a plane crash they said was weather-related. But I found his journals. Oracle was his last project. Before he disappeared, he told me if it ever resurfaced, I'd need to finish what he started." Lena's voice cracked. "What do you mean? Finish it?" Caroline looked at the map pinned to the wall, dotted with thumbtacks and scribbled coordinates. "It's not just data. Oracle is connected to real-time surveillance. Live access to infrastructure grids, water systems, satellites. And someone is trying to activate it again without oversight." "Who?" Caroline hesitated. "I think it's someone inside the Intelligence Committee. Someone who buried that file. But it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for me. A test." Back at the Capitol, Jasmine received a red folder marked Eyes Only. Inside was a surveillance image from 2 days ago. Caroline speaking with a known whistleblower in a parking garage. Underneath it was a warning. If she isn't stopped, she expose all of it. Jasmine closed the folder, her breath shallow. She had gone to that hearing expecting a verbal brawl. What she got was the first move in a much bigger game. One where reputations, alliances, and perhaps entire governments were at stake. And no one knew whose side anyone was really on. Rain tapped gently against the window panes of the old stone building in Brussels. Inside, the air was dry and humming with quiet tension. Screens flickered, displaying real-time intelligence feeds, satellite maps, and encrypted communications. At the center of it all sat Elise Van Doren, senior analyst for the EU Intelligence Coordination Center. She had served through cyber attacks, coups, and black ops. But this, whatever this was, felt different. "Is it confirmed?" she asked, not looking up from the screen. "Shez," said her aide. 5-1-4-2-6 matches the decommissioned Kestrel protocol, and it's been activated. Elise stood. Her fingers twitched as she walked to the center table. A map of North America was projected, layered with red nodes and movement patterns. "And who triggered it?" Her aide hesitated. "We believe it was Caroline Leavitt." Elise narrowed her eyes. "A U.S. Congresswoman just reactivated a cross-border surveillance network that was shut down after a global scandal." "Yes." "On live television?" For a moment, the room held its breath. Elise whispered, "She's sending a signal." Back in Washington, Caroline sat alone in her Arlington bunker. The lights buzzed overhead. Lena had left to retrieve files from storage, and Caroline used the moment to unlock the steel box under her father's desk. Inside were old cassette tapes, yellowing documents, and a worn envelope marked in her father's handwriting. Oracle. Final. Do not trust anyone. She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single photo. 4 men, 1 woman, standing outside a military base in Ramstein, Germany. Her father was in the center. And standing next to him, unmistakable even. Younger was Congressman Thomas Greer. A chill slid down her spine. Greer was now the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He had praised her speech after the hearing, even smiled at her in the hallway. An unusual gesture from someone known for keeping distance from junior members. Caroline played one of the tapes. Her father's voice crackled through the static. "If anything happens to me, if Oracle comes back online, it means the reset failed. You have to finish it, Caroline. Greer is part of it. So is the European cell. If they activate Oracle, they'll control every backdoor we ever built into power grids, elections, even global news. It's not about watching enemies. It's about controlling allies. She froze. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A private number. She answered without speaking. A man's voice, deep and slow. "You opened the box." Caroline stayed silent. "You don't understand what you've stepped into. Shut it down. Walk away. Or we will do it for you." Then the line went dead. She sat frozen, gripping the phone. The message wasn't just a threat. It was a warning from someone inside the system, someone watching her movements. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett sat at a private dinner in Georgetown with Congressman Greer. The mood was guarded. "She's not who you think she is," Greer said, slicing his steak with surgical precision. "That girl Levitt, she's not some rising star. She's legacy intelligence. Her father was deep ops." Jasmine paused, fork midair. Greer leaned in. "She's looking for something he left behind. And if she finds it, it could dismantle every major operation we've spent the last 2 decades building." Jasmine frowned. "Then why not just shut her down?" Greer smiled coldly. "Because sometimes the best way to eliminate a threat is to let them reveal their hand. She just walked onto the stage. Let's see how far she goes." In Tel Aviv, Asher Levy received a second alert. Oracle nodes were beginning to ping in Italy, Germany, and Canada. Someone had accessed buried scripts that hadn't been touched in a decade. "She's not just activating them," he whispered to himself. "She's opening the map." His supervisor stepped in. "What's her angle?" Asher shrugged. "She's not after control. She's after the truth." Back in Arlington, Lena returned to find Caroline still sitting in silence. "I found it," she said, holding up a USB drive. "The final Oracle code. But we have a problem." Caroline looked up. "It requires 2 keys. One you have. The second is held by a classified terminal inside the Capitol. Restricted to senior intelligence committee members." Caroline's face hardened. "Then we need access. Greer has it." "You can't go through him. He's in the old photo." "He's part of it." "I'm not going through him," Caroline said. "I'm going around him." Her eyes locked with Lena's. The next step wasn't about speeches or social media. It was about infiltration. And if what her father left behind was true, the secrets inside Oracle didn't just threaten a few reputations. They could unravel the fragile balance of trust between nations and ignite a storm far beyond Washington, one that had already begun. The morning sky over Washington was pale and gray, the kind of color that made everything feel quieter, more cautious. Inside the Capitol, it was anything but quiet. There was chatter in hushed tones, staffers moving with unusual urgency, and committee doors being kept shut longer than usual. Caroline Levitt stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, dressed in a conservative navy blue suit. She looked like any other congresswoman heading to a day of hearings. But hidden in her pocket was a small flash drive, the final code her father had left behind. The second part of the Oracle activation sequence lay within a terminal only, accessible through restricted access inside the Capitol's secure intelligence room, a chamber known among insiders as the Vault. It wasn't just a nickname. No phones, no outside signals, biometric entry only. And yet, Carolyn had a plan. Lena had spent the night digging through staff logs and biometric data. They'd found someone loyal to Caroline's father. Long thought retired, but now working in Capitol maintenance under a false name at precisely 9:17 a.m. Caroline entered the intelligence wing of the Capitol under the pretense of delivering a report on cybersecurity legislation. She was waved through 2 checkpoints. At the third, she paused. A guard scanned her ID badge. The screen blinked red. Caroline smiled. "Try again. I was just cleared for this morning." The guard nodded, tried again. Green, she exhaled, inside. The vault was colder than expected. Metallic. Sterile. Only a few members of Congress had ever set foot inside. Congressman Thomas Greer being one of them. She walked straight to Terminal 7. It was positioned in a corner, half obscured by a structural beam. Lena had calculated that this would give her approximately 12 seconds of blind time between surveillance sweeps. She inserted the flash drive. The screen lit up with a login prompt. Caroline entered her father's old NSA credentials. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the screen changed. Oracle Master Interface 2-key confirmation required key 1, verified key 2. Awaiting biometric match, clearance level read. Caroline's pulse quickened. She turned to the door. Her contact, a janitor in his 60s with faded blue eyes and an old army tattoo on his wrist, stepped inside silently. He nodded once, placed his palm on the scanner. The interface beeped. Access granted. The screen flickered to life. Real-time satellite feeds, global infrastructure control points, backdoor channels all spread out in a dense web. Caroline searched one phrase, Operation Reset. A single file appeared. Locked, but the timestamp caught her attention. Last opened 3 weeks ago by Greer. Before she could dive deeper, alarms started blinking across the bottom of the screen. Unauthorized signal detected, trace initiated. They know we're in. Think, janitor whispered. Caroline pulled the drive and slipped it into her coat, then calmly walked out. Across the building, Thomas Greer stared at a blinking red dot on his tablet, his jaw clenched. She took the bait, he muttered. She has the full sequence. A staffer beside him shifted uneasily. Should we alert federal oversight? Greer's smile was thin. No, let her run. She just crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. The same time, Jasmine Crockett was in a closed-door session with senior Democratic leaders. She had been called in unexpectedly, not to scold, but to brief. Tell us what you know about Levitt, one of them said. Not the public version, the real one. Jasmine leaned back. She's not naive. She plays young and calm, but she's methodical. That speech wasn't an accident. She was laying groundwork. What kind? Jasmine hesitated. The kind that makes you question who she's working for. Later that night, Caroline and Lena sat in a darkened office. The flash drive connected to a secured laptop with no internet access. They opened the Oracle interface again. Caroline played a decrypted file. Labeled Reset Phase I. It was a video her father appeared on screen, older than she remembered, wearing a heavy coat. He looked tired. If you're seeing this, he said. Then Oracle wasn't shut down. It was just put to sleep. Greer and the cell never intended to dismantle it. They planned to let the world think it was gone while they built something newer, quieter. Reset is that plan. It begins with manipulation, not of enemies, but of allies. Elections, infrastructure, public opinion. Using Oracle to destabilize. Governments from within, not war. Control. Caroline sat frozen. The file ended with one final warning. You must find the backups. Before they do. Brussels, Ramstein, London. Oracle is everywhere. And once it starts, it won't stop. Suddenly, Lena's phone buzzed, an encrypted message from a whistleblower they had contacted days earlier. They know. Get out. You're being tracked. Vault logs leaked out outside. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street, headlights off. A man inside was on the phone. She has the keys. We proceed to Phase 2. In that moment, Caroline understood something chilling. This wasn't just about Oracle, it was about everything it touched. Everything it could destroy, and the storm was no longer coming, it was here. The rain had turned into a downpour by morning. Washington looked gray and uneasy, like it knew something terrible was approaching. In a safe house just outside the city, Caroline Levitt stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. Lena was asleep on the couch nearby. Drained after a night of decoding the next location, Ramstein Air Base. Germany. The files left by Caroline's father pointed to Ramstein as one of 3 remaining nodes holding backup data for Oracle. Data that proved everything. manipulation of elections, false uprisings, even staged political rivalries that had fooled millions. Greer's name was stamped across several logs, but worse, so were names from allies abroad. European officials, British intelligence, even unnamed assets in the Israeli Knesset. Caroline whispered to herself, it's not just a program. It's a weapon dressed as a safeguard. But she had no time left. As the sky lightened, she received an unmarked envelope slid under the door. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph of her and Lena, taken from a rooftop opposite their safe house. Time-stamped just hours ago. A message was scrawled beneath in shaky ink. Too late to hide. Only truth can protect you now. Caroline felt her stomach turn. They were being watched, even here back at the Capitol. Jasmine Crockett entered her office to find Greer already waiting, seated at her desk like it was his own. She raised an eyebrow. Don't remember inviting you. You don't need to, Greer said, standing. But you should sit down. We're going to talk about what comes next. She didn't sit. I'm not on your leash, Greer. He smiled, cold, tired. No, but you're smart enough to know which way the wind is blowing. What do you want? Levitt's going overseas. She's following a trail that was never meant to be followed. She exposes what we buried. None of us walk away clean. Not her, not me, not you. Jasmine's expression hardened. I'm not part of your circle. You were the distraction. That hearing the cameras, we needed her to show her hand. You gave her the stage and she took it. For the first time, Jasmine hesitated. She remembered the look on Caroline's face after the exchange. Not defiant, but focused, driven. You used me. Greer nodded, and I'd do it again. Oh. Question is, are you going to help clean this up, or do I treat you like her? Jasmine stared at him, don't, and then walked out without another word, half a world away. Caroline stepped off a transport near Ramstein under an assumed name. Lena had arranged for a German journalist contact to meet them. His name was Klaus Meyer. Balding, quiet, with a nervous twitch that made Caroline uneasy. I know where the archive is, Klaus whispered, leading them through a side alley. It's not in the base, it's beneath it. They descended through an abandoned munitions tunnel, torchlight casting long shadows. At the far end was a sealed steel door. Klaus pulled out a tablet, typed a code, and the lock clicked inside. Rows of old servers blinked to life as backup power kicked in. Oracle's original infrastructure untouched since 2012. Caroline approached a dusty control terminal. Inserted the flash drive. A low hum filled the room. The screen flickered. Oracle core files located begin. Download. ETA 15 MyoNewTSs. The progress bar crept forward. Lena stood at the entrance, watching for movement. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Caroline looked up. Klaus backed away, hands raised. I didn't tell anyone. I swear. Lena's voice went sharp. They're here. A voice echoed down the tunnel. You always were too much like your father. Greer. Caroline stepped in front of the screen, shielding the drive. Greer entered. The chamber alone, no security, no gun. Just certainty. You think releasing this helps anyone? He said it'll destroy alliances, collapse markets, ignite wars. Caroline's voice shook with rage. You've already done that. You've just did it in silence. Greer stepped closer. What if I told you this was never about control? It was about survival. It's keeping a world on the edge from tipping over. By lying to it, he paused. Yes, because truth doesn't unite. It fractures. For a moment, the chamber felt like it would split apart. Past and present, right? And wrong, the daughter and the system her father tried to stop. Then the screen beeped. Download complete. Caroline pulled the drive. I'm going to show the world. Let them decide what fractures. Greer looked almost tired. You won't make it out of Germany. Caroline stared him down. Watch me. Then she turned and ran, Lena right behind her. Sirens sounded above. Doors locking. security swarming. But they had what they came for. And now wasn't just about survival, it was about justice. And the next move would change everything. The jet engines roared to life as the private aircraft lifted off from a covert airstrip just outside Kaiserslautern. Caroline sat in the back, her knuckles white around the flash drive. Across from her, Lena watched the horizon shrink behind. "Them we have maybe 5 hours," Lena said quietly, tapping through encrypted channels on her laptop. "Interpol's on high alert. Greer will paint you as a rogue agent before we land." Caroline didn't answer. Her mind was back in that underground server room, her father's ghost, the weight of truth now resting in her pocket. Her lips pressed into a hard line. "Then we have 4 hours to make the truth louder than the lies." Halfway through the flight, the signal booster finally connected. Lena opened a live connection to their secure media contact in London, Amina Darzi, a former war correspondent turned independent broadcaster. Amina had been fired from the BBC for reporting on classified NATO operations in Syria. She didn't scare easily. Her face appeared on screen, eyes sharp. "I hope you're calling to deliver something world-shattering," she said, "because MI6 just scrubbed your name from their files." Caroline leaned forward. "We have Oracle, the real one, the backups, and the plans for Operation Reset." For a second, Amina said nothing. "Then get to London. I'll set up the broadcast." No filters, no edits. As the call ended, Lena turned the laptop toward Caroline. "We'll be seen as heroes by some, traitors by others." "I don't care what they call me," Caroline replied, "as long as they hear the truth." But even as the plane crossed into British airspace, danger crept closer. Back in Washington, Jasmine Crockett stood in her apartment, staring at a classified envelope marked "Fema Line." It had been slid under her door hours after her confrontation with Greer. Inside were documents, Oracle testing reports, targeted misinformation operations, election interference logs, all stamped with Department of Homeland Security seals. She read each line with growing horror. Jasmine had never liked Caroline Levitt. But this wasn't politics anymore. It was systemic betrayal. A quiet war waged against the people they swore to serve. She picked up the phone and called, an old contact at CNN. "I have a story," she said, "and it's going to shake the damn White House." By the time Caroline landed in London, her name had already been leaked to the global press. The Guardian ran a headline: "Levitt accused of data theft from U.S. intelligence. Truth teller or national security threat." On Twitter, hashtags exploded. Hashtag expose Oracle. Hashtag Greer leaks. And hashtag Crockett speaks. The world was watching. Amina met them at a secured building tucked behind the River Thames. The broadcast studio was small but fully independent, powered by private servers and off-grid backup. Lena set up the transmission while Caroline rehearsed in her mind what she was about to say, not to her party, not to Congress, but to humanity. Then the countdown began. 5:403. 2. The camera light turned red. Caroline looked directly into the lens. "My name is Caroline Levitt. I am a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. What I am about to share will change how you see your governments, your media, and even your elections." She held up the flash drive. "This contains Oracle, a surveillance and influence system designed by U.S. intelligence not to protect, but to control. Operation Reset was launched to quietly manipulate foreign and domestic governments using Oracle's tools, social unrest, data blackouts, election engineering. This isn't fiction, it's real. And it's already in motion." As she spoke, visuals began rolling, decrypted files, maps, voice recordings, even footage of Greer at a secret council meeting marked Oracle Cell, Tier 1. "Many of you will be told I'm lying, that I'm a traitor. But this isn't about left or right. It's about the right to know. It's the right to choose, the right to truth." She ended with a final sentence. "Do not sit down. Stand up. Ask the questions they don't want you to ask. The screen faded to black. Within minutes. The internet fractured. The video was downloaded, copied, spread on Reddit, Twitter, and Telegram. Millions watched within the first hour. News anchors across the globe scrambled to verify the files. Investigations began in Brussels. Leaks hit Canadian and Israeli intelligence agencies. Hacktivists exposed shell companies tied to ORSAL's funding and inside a secure military compound in Nevada. General Ellis, one of Oracle's top strategists, placed a call. She's activated the failsafe. Is she secure? Came. The voice on the other end, she's alive. For now, but it won't be long before every intelligence service in the West wants her either silenced or recruited. Meanwhile, in London, Caroline turned to Lena. It's out. We did it, Lena. Didn't smile? No, we just lit the fuse. Now the explosion comes. Outside the studio, unmarked cars had started to appear. Men in plain clothes were spotted checking exits. Amina locked the studio doors. Jasmine Crockett, now in New York, was preparing for her own live interview. This time, not to criticize, but to confirm, I don't agree with Caroline on politics, she told a producer. But what she uncovered is real. And I will not be silent about it. The world had been shaken, but what came next would be even more dangerous. Because now, the truth was out and everyone with something to lose was coming for it. The hotel room was quiet, too quiet. The lights were off, curtains drawn, and the only sound came from the street outside, the kind of muffled, uncertain silence that precedes something irreversible. Caroline sat cross-legged on the floor, her phone in one hand and the flash drive in the other. The original Oracle data had already been uploaded to 10 secure locations. But what haunted her now wasn't whether the world would believe it. It was what came next. Across from her, Lena scrolled through feeds. Germany has launched a parliamentary inquiry. The UK wants an emergency NATO summit. Israel's prime minister just denied everything, but half of their defense cabinet is in hiding. Caroline barely nodded. The global firestorm had begun. Bo, she wasn't safe. Neither was Lena. And the question burning in her mind was, had she done the right thing? Then her phone buzzed. A message. No name. You exposed the system. Now you'll see what it does to survive. Before she could react, an explosion rocked the building. Glass shattered. The room shook. Lena lunged forward, pulling Caroline behind the bed as debris rained down from the ceiling. Downstairs, screaming. A fire alarm. Footsteps in the hallway. They've found us, Lena hissed. Move. The two sprinted out the back stairwell, descending floor after floor as sirens howled and the scent of smoke filled the air. Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled around the block. This way, shouted a voice. Amina Darzi, bruised but standing, waved from a side alley. She'd gotten out just minutes before the blast. I've got a secure car. Let's go. They piled into the vehicle and peeled away from the wreckage. As they sped through London's dark streets, Caroline looked back one last time at the hotel, flames flickering from the top floor. They're not even hiding anymore, she said quietly. No, Amina replied. They're warning. Hours later, in an underground safe zone beneath a decommissioned tube station, the 3 of them huddled in front of a wall of screens. News from every continent was flooding in. U.S. lawmakers were demanding hearings. European leaders called for a review of all intelligence partnerships. Protests broke out in 5 capitals. And then, something unexpected? Jasmine Crockett appeared on live international broadcast, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, all at once. Her face was calm, eyes locked on the camera like a prosecutor facing history. I was part of the system, she said. I sat in those hearings. I dismissed Caroline Levitt as just another media-hungry politician. I was wrong. She paused, swallowing emotion. She told the truth. Oracle is real. And the people behind it would rather burn down the world than give up control. Caroline felt her throat tighten. Jasmine continued. But now the world knows, and we must decide what to do with that truth, not as parties, not as nations, as people. The message went viral. And in that moment, something shifted. This was no longer just about one woman's defiance or one system's corruption. It was about something deeper, collective reckoning. But even then, new dangers emerged. Lena pointed at a feed. Anonymous sources say a splinter faction inside Oracle's architecture is activating something called Project Silencer. Caroline leaned forward. What is it? Not sure yet. But it's digital and global. It's possibly a way to neutralize mass exposure, take down communications, rewrite data, fabricate narratives in real time. Caroline stared at the screens. They're preparing to erase what we did. Lena didn't answer. She didn't need to. It meant they had one chance left, not just to reveal, but to preserve. To create a new kind of firewall. Public knowledge, mass redundancy, citizen-led archiving. We need to open source everything, Caroline said suddenly. All of it. No gatekeepers. No single server. Just raw truth, everywhere. Lena nodded. We'll need coders, broadcasters, whistleblowers, journalists, a network, Amina added, and protection. The next strike won't be polite. Caroline stood slowly. I'm not going underground, she said. I'm going loud. This fight doesn't end in the shadows. It ends in daylight. It's within 24 hours. The Levite files, rebranded from Oracle, were distributed globally through decentralized blockchain repositories. Civic organizations, universities, and watchdog groups joined hands to maintain the network. Every attempt to discredit it only brought more eyes. And then the final domino fell. A military general in the Pentagon leaked the internal Oracle kill code to independent media. Overnight, the core server in Nevada was shut down. Dozens of top-level resignations followed. Greer among them, last seen boarding a flight to an undisclosed location. But the scars would remain, the trust broken, the truths uncovered. And in the midst of it all, Caroline Leavitt stood not as a politician, but as something else entirely, a spark. For millions who had once felt voiceless, invisible, betrayed, she had done what no one expected. She had stood. And in doing so, she had set fire to the silence. Not everyone forgave. Not everyone believed. But everyone remembered. Because truth, once spoken loud enough, never disappears. It echoes forever.